Let's explore the features of the new Hyper Oscillator in DigiSynth 3. We'll open a patch, and inside the patch you can see the master output component. We'll right-click to add another component, and that will be a DC offset. And we'll place this DC offset with an output to red so that we can turn that on and get some output. We'll just click 100%, and then here you can see a little red dot in the preview window. Now we'll add another component, and that will be the Hyper Oscillator. The Hyper Oscillator is a little bit different from any previous oscillator you may have seen, in that it has multiple outputs, not just a sine and cosine, but multiple adjustable outputs. So we can click to add as many as we'd like. You can have up to 10 outputs from one oscillator, and those outputs will be harmonically related to the first line out. So we'll take that over to X, and we'll take the other to Y. And here you can see a circle. It assumes that you do want a sine-cosine relationship for that first output. By clicking on that object, we can see in the Object Inspector that we have a Hyper Oscillator as the main oscillator here, and then other channels, and we can scroll to see those other channels. We can also collapse these channels to organize them a little bit better. So just looking at the main oscillator, we have a variety of things happening here. The base frequency, we have a slider that you can adjust, and you can also type in the number directly. And then one of my favorite buttons, the little harmonic bump buttons for plus and minus, and that doubles or halves the frequency that the oscillator runs at. Now this adjusts the main base frequency for the oscillator, so the harmonic relationships of all the other outputs will stay locked in. We also have an amplitude, and then a reverse direction, and stall on sync, and those are adjustable with the little checkboxes here. We'll get into the stall on sync later, but I think reverse direction is pretty obvious. There's a frequency modulation, the waveform type, there are sine, triangle, sawtooth, and square, and then any DC offset that you'd like to have from that output as well. Going to channel 1, you see we have a frequency multiplier. This is adjustable by clicking here. And as you see in the preview window, we definitely get the effect as you make those adjustments. And we'll go back to a circle. We also have control over that waveform type, the amplitude, and the DC offset. But now we also have a phase control as well. So we can set that phase to be the proper relationship that we're looking for, with the output exactly where we want it. You can also go ahead and type that in so we can get that back to 25%, which would be a 90 degrees out of phase from the original oscillator. We do have the reverse direction there as well, should you need to use that. Now looking at some of the other things that we have inputs such as frequency modulation, a freeze pin which will lock that oscillator to not moving when that gets a high signal, amplitude modulations for each of those outputs, and then also a cycle sync. This is a pulse that will happen when the oscillator wraps around and begins the start of its oscillating. That can be useful for triggering blanking, sequencing, linear arrays, all sorts of stuff. At this point, you should have a fairly good understanding of how the Hyper Oscillator works. We'll look at it again in another patch.